Okay, in this lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about decimals, and decimals are basically a fraction. I mean, we would typically in pharmacy work more with a decimal than we would a fraction. Um, However, I want you to remember a fraction is really a representation of a ratio. So, um, if you're saying 1/4, it could be 1 part to 4 parts. So 1 part of this active ingredient to 4 parts of this other non-active ingredient. So that's really what you want to think about. And a decimal is basically, I want you to look at this definition that I have here. So a decimal is a mathematical form that represents a straight line of units described as a fraction. So I always look at a decimal like a number line. Okay, so let's draw a number line here. And right in the center we have 0, right? And everything to the right of 0 is a whole number, and everything left of 0 is a fraction or a decimal. Okay, so it's part of a whole, it's not a whole. So that's one thing you got to keep in mind. And the other thing we got to remember in our decimals when we're talking about it is the place value. So I put this on here because I think it's helpful. If you're going to the left, you're going smaller, and every time you move a number down, you are changing your place value. So one spot behind the decimal is the tenths. You got to put that th on there, the tenths, and then this is the hundredths, tenths, hundredths, and the third spot is the thousandths, and the fourth spot is the 10,000ths. So things to remember when you're looking on the left side of that 0 or that decimal. On the right side, these are whole numbers, so ones, tens, hundreds, thousand, 10,000. Okay, and it's just how you read the number. Um, you can read and write the decimal fraction. These are some rules when you're reading a decimal. Like let's say it's 1.05. How would I say that? It's 1 and 5/100ths because it's in the hundredths place. There's a 0 in the tenths place. I don't mention that. So if I had 1 and 1/5, this would be 1 and 15/100ths because I'm going out to the hundredths place. So it's how you refer to or read that decimal. And you can pause it if you'd like and read through each one of um, these statements, but I'm not going to go through them individually. So let's take a look at decimals a little bit closer. Okay. So one thing we want to learn is how to express our fractions as decimals and our decimals as fractions. So it is good practice to place a 0 before a decimal point. Now this is critical. I want you to highlight this, and what it's saying is so often when you guys write a decimal, let's say you'll do 0.1, okay? When you're in pharmacy, it is required for you to write 0.1. You cannot write 0.2 because this point right here can so easily be lost in a prescription that you will miss it. And if it's zero point 0.2 milligrams, you may actually dose your patient at 2 milligrams. And if you do that, that's a misdosing. That's a lot of medication. Take, for example, a drug called fentanyl. Fentanyl, the smallest adjustment in that dose could kill a patient. We measure fentanyl in micrograms. Okay, mcgs, micrograms. And if we give 0.2 micrograms to a patient for fentanyl, that's a normal dose. But if I give them 2 micrograms, I could potentially kill my patient because I didn't put that 0 in front of it and I just put 0.2 and I missed the decimal. So it's not good practice. It is required for you to always place a 0 before a decimal point. If I were your instructor for this class, if you fail to write 0.1 or 0 point whatever in any of your answers, I would count it wrong. You must write the 0. It is required. So make a note of that. Very, very important. Okay, so this is just going over the place values again and looking at them in more of a fraction way. So you have your decimal point right here, which is your 0. That's your 0 line on your number line. And if I had a 1, that's going to be my ones, my tens, my hundreds, and that's what my number would look like, right? In this side, this would be 1 over 10, 1/10, or 0.1. This would be 1 100th or 0.01. Okay, and 1,000, this would be 0.001 because we would put it in the place value of whatever that denominator states. Okay, so that's how you are going to convert a fraction into a decimal. So here are some definitions again. A common fraction is part of a whole number. It is a process of dividing a number into a numerator separated by the denominator by both a horizontal or a diagonal line. Okay, a decimal fraction is a fraction that is an unwritten denominator to the power of. To express a common fraction as a decimal, follow these steps. Here it says divide the denominator of the fraction into the numerator. So I want to do 1 divided by 2. Oops, can you not see that? You can't see that. So 2 goes into 1, it doesn't. So if I have that, I have to add a decimal and another 0. So 2 goes into 10 how many times? 5 times. So 5 times 2 is 10, and that comes out to 0. Now I want to bring that decimal up and add a 0, and my answer is 0.5. Now you can do that on a calculator if you want. We do allow calculators, and I recommend you getting a simple calculator. I'm going to put my calculator in front like this, just a simple calculator. It should not be a big scientific calculator, very simple. And that's how you calculate a fraction. Okay, or convert a fraction into a decimal. So let's go to the next step, expressing a decimal as a common fraction. So read the decimal fraction. The numerator is the number you get when you move the decimal point to the right past the last number. The denominator is the number of spaces you move the decimal. And remember that each space is representative of a fraction. So for example, 0.25. The numerator is this number, 25. And the denominator is the place value. So this goes out to the hundredths place. So it'd be over 100. But I can reduce that, right? I can reduce 25 over 100. If I reduce that and simplify that fraction, that's the same thing as saying 1/4, right? So 1/4 is equal to 0.25 as far as its decimal. Okay? And that's how you know that's your fraction. So remember, this number becomes your numerator, 25, and your denominator is its place value. So that's the tens place, that's the hundredths place. Since it's in the hundredths place, I'm going to put it over 100. So it's 25 over 100. That's our common fraction. I can reduce that to 1/4. So 1/4 is equivalent to a decimal of 0.25.